The discovery in the metal graveyard, the salvage ship. Rusty dreams drifted through the asteroid field, known as Kepler's Boneyard, where derelict vessels came to die. Captain Marcus Reed adjusted the scanner settings, searching for anything valuable among the twisted metal corpses. His weathered hands moved with practiced ease across the control panel, years of scavenging written in every careful movement. "Another dead hauler," muttered his engineer, Tommy Vasquez, peering through the viewport at a shattered cargo vessel. "Looks like pirates got to it first." Marcus nodded, guiding their small ship deeper into the graveyard. The Rusty Dreams wasn't much to look at: patched hull, outdated engines, and systems held together by hope and spare parts. But she was home to Marcus and his small crew of outcasts who made their living picking through space debris. Faint energy signature caught his attention, different from the usual power cell readings. This one pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Marcus frowned, adjusting course toward a crumpled research vessel half buried in asteroid debris. "Boss, that ship's been dark for months," Tommy warned. "Scanners show it's been picked clean." "Maybe," Marcus replied, but something felt different about this one. As they drew closer, the energy signature grew stronger. It wasn't coming from the ship's power core. It was coming from the cargo bay. They docked carefully, magnetic clamps securing the Rusty Dreams to the derelict's airlock. Marcus suited up, checking his oxygen levels twice. The research vessels. Corridors were dark and cold, filled with floating debris. Emergency lighting flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The cargo bay doors hung open, revealing scattered crates and broken containers. But in the far corner, partially hidden behind a collapsed bulkhead, Marcus found the source of the energy reading. A stasis pod, its blue-tinted glass fogged with condensation. Inside lay a young alien female, her pale blue skin marked with intricate silver patterns. She appeared unconscious, connected to life support systems that beeped weakly. Her species was unfamiliar to Marcus humanoid, but clearly not human, with elongated limbs and delicate features. A datapad floating nearby contained shipping records. Marcus's blood ran cold as he read, "Property of Zarkon Industries. Genetic. Experiment designation Z47. Failed breeding program subject. Authorized for disposal." The girl wasn't cargo. She was a person being thrown away, like garbage. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He activated his comm unit. "Tommy, prep the medical bay. We're bringing someone aboard." "Boss, we don't run rescue missions." "We do now," Marcus cut him off, beginning the careful process of disconnecting the stasis pod. The girl's eyes fluttered open for a moment, meeting his through the glass. Fear and confusion swirled in their violet depths before she slipped back into unconsciousness. As Marcus worked to stabilize the pod for transport, he wondered what kind of monsters would discard a living being like waste. Whatever experiments they'd done to her, whatever they'd taken from her, it ended now. Alien girl left to rot in scrap. A human's kindness changed everything. Part 1. The discovery in the metal graveyard. The salvage ship Rusty Dreams drifted through the asteroid field known as Kepler's Boneyard, where derelict vessels came to die. Captain Marcus Reed adjusted the scanner settings, searching for anything valuable among the twisted metal corpses. His weathered hands moved with practiced ease across the control panel, years of scavenging written in every careful movement. "Another dead hauler," muttered his engineer, Tommy Vasquez, peering through the viewport at a shattered cargo vessel. "Looks like pirates got to it first." Marcus nodded, guiding their small ship deeper into the graveyard. The Rusty Dreams wasn't much to look at: patched hull, outdated engines, and systems held together by hope and spare parts. But she was home to Marcus and his small crew of outcasts who made their living picking through space debris A faint energy signature caught his attention, different from the usual power cell readings. This one pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Marcus frowned, adjusting course toward a crumpled research vessel half buried in asteroid debris. "Boss, that ship's been dark for months," Tommy warned. "Scanners show it's been picked clean." "Maybe," Marcus replied, but something felt different about this one. As they drew closer, the energy signature grew stronger. It wasn't coming from the ship's power core. It was coming from the cargo bay. They docked carefully, magnetic clamps securing the Rusty Dreams to the derelict's airlock. Marcus suited up, checking his oxygen levels twice. The research vessels. Corridors were dark and cold, filled with floating debris. Emergency lighting flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The cargo bay doors hung open, revealing scattered crates and broken containers. But in the far corner, partially hidden behind a collapsed bulkhead, Marcus found the source of the energy reading. A stasis pod, its blue-tinted glass fogged with condensation. Inside lay a young alien female, her pale blue skin marked with intricate silver patterns. She appeared unconscious, connected to life support systems that beeped weakly. Her species was unfamiliar to Marcus humanoid, but clearly not human, with elongated limbs and delicate features. A datapad floating nearby contained shipping records. Marcus's blood ran cold as he read, "Property of Zarkon Industries. Genetic. Experiment designation Z47. Failed breeding program subject. Authorized for disposal." The girl wasn't cargo. She was a person being thrown away, like garbage. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He activated his comm unit. "Tommy, prep the medical bay. We're bringing someone aboard." "Boss, we don't run rescue missions." "We do now," Marcus cut him off, beginning the careful process of disconnecting the stasis pod. The girl's eyes fluttered open for a moment, meeting his through the glass. Fear and confusion swirled in their violet depths before she slipped back into unconsciousness. As Marcus worked to stabilize the pod for transport, he wondered what kind of monsters would discard a living being like waste. Whatever experiments they'd done to her, whatever they'd taken from her, it ended now. Part 2, Awakening, and Trust. The medical bay of the Rusty Dreams hummed with activity as the alien girl slowly regained consciousness. Dr. Catherine Wells, the ship's medic and former military surgeon, monitored the life signs carefully. She'd seen plenty of trauma cases, but this one troubled her deeply. "Her vitals are stabilizing," Catherine reported to Marcus, who stood nearby with arms crossed. "But the psychological trauma, that's going to take time." The girl's eyes opened suddenly, darting around the unfamiliar room with panic. She tried to sit up, but Catherine gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Easy there, sweetheart. You're safe now." The alien girl recoiled from the touch, pressing herself against the far wall of the medical bed. Her breathing quickened, and the monitoring equipment began beeping rapidly. She spoke in a language none of them understood, her voice trembling with fear. "She thinks we're going to hurt her," Catherine whispered sadly. "Look at those scars." "Marcus, they're not from accidents." Marcus approached slowly, hands visible and empty. He knelt down to be at eye level with the frightened girl. "My name is Marcus," he said softly, pointing to himself. "Marcus." He repeated the gesture several times until she seemed to understand. Tentatively, the girl pointed to herself and whispered something in her native tongue. Catherine tried to repeat it, but the girl shook her head and pointed to a small device on the medical table. A universal translator that had been connected to her stasis pod. Tommy Vasquez entered carrying a bowl of warm soup. "Figured she might be hungry," he said quietly. The alien girl's eyes immediately fixed on the food, and her stomach growled audibly. "When's the last time they fed you properly?" Marcus wondered aloud, taking the bowl and offering it to her. She hesitated, looking between the food and his face, as if trying to determine his intentions. Finally, hunger won over caution. She accepted the bowl with shaking hands and began eating slowly, never taking her eyes off the humans around her. Each spoonful seemed to bring a little more color to her pale features. Over the next few hours, they learned her name was Lyra, the Universal. Translator helped bridge the language gap, though she spoke hesitantly, as if unused to having her words matter. She revealed fragments of her story taken from her homeworld as a child, subjected to genetic modifications for a breeding program that ultimately deemed her defective. They said I was worthless, Lyra whispered, staring at her hands. That no one would ever want damaged goods. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. They were wrong. You're not goods, you're a person. And you're not damaged, you're a survivor. For the first time since awakening, Lyra met his eyes directly. Why did you save me? Your kind and mine. We're not allies. Maybe not, Marcus replied. But that doesn't mean we can't be decent to each other. Besides, anyone who throws away a living person like trash, they're not my kind of people, regardless of species. Catherine smiled as she watched Lyra finish the soup. The girl was beginning to relax, her shoulders no longer rigid with tension. It would be a long road to recovery, but they'd taken the first step. Tommy cleared his throat. So, what's the plan, boss? We can't exactly drop her off at the nearest spaceport. Marcus looked at Lyra, who was watching their conversation with keen intelligence, despite her ordeal. Then I guess she stays with us, if she wants to. Lyra's eyes widened with surprise. You would let me stay, even though I bring no value? Everyone has value, Marcus said firmly. You just need a chance to discover yours. Finding purpose among the stars, 3 weeks had passed since Lyra joined the crew of the Rusty Dreams. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the frightened, broken girl they'd found in the stasis pod. In her place stood someone discovering her own strength and abilities. Lyra, can you run a deep scan on that debris field? Marcus called. From the captain's chair. They were investigating a recent battlefield where 2 corporate fleets had clashed, leaving valuable salvage floating in space. Lyra's fingers danced across the sensor controls with growing confidence. Her enhanced genetics, originally intended for breeding programs, had given her extraordinary pattern recognition abilities and reflexes. What Zarkin Industries had seen as failed experiments, the crew of the Rusty Dreams recognized as unique talents. I'm detecting 17 intact power cores, she reported, her voice steady and clear. And Marcus ... there's something else. A distress beacon very weak. It's coming from inside that destroyed cruiser. Tommy looked up from his engineering station. That ship's been dead for 2 days. Nothing could survive that long without life support. Unless they found a way to improvise, Catherine suggested, already preparing medical supplies. The crew had learned to trust Lyra's enhanced senses, she'd proven, remarkably adept at detecting things their standard equipment missed as they approached the wrecked cruiser. Lyra's readings proved accurate once again. Inside the twisted remains of the vessel, they found 3 survivors, a family of alien refugees who had been passengers when pirates attacked. They'd sealed themselves in a cargo hold and jury-rigged an emergency beacon. How did you know? Asked the grateful father, a reptilian humanoid, as Catherine treated his injured daughter. Our beacon was operating on minimal power. Lyra smiled shyly. I was made to notice patterns others miss. I just ... Listen differently now. The rescue operation became the first of many. Word began to spread through the salvage community about the crew of the Rusty Dreams, how they didn't just strip wrecks for profit, but actually saved lives. Some called them soft, others called them heroes, Marcus didn't care about labels. "You realize we're making less profit," Tommy pointed out. One evening after they'd diverted course to rescue survivors from a merchant vessel. "These rescue operations eat into our scavenging time." "Maybe," Marcus replied, watching Lyra teach the refugee children a simple game using spare parts. "But look at her, Tommy. Look how she's found her purpose." Lyra had indeed transformed. The scared, broken girl was becoming a confident young woman who saw value in every life they encountered. Her enhanced abilities made her an exceptional sensor operator, but more importantly, she developed an almost supernatural ability to spot survivors. Others had given up for dead during a particularly challenging rescue from a collapsed mining station. Lyra suddenly stopped the operation. "Wait," she said, studying her readings. "There's someone else. Deep in the lower levels, barely breathing." "Lyra, we've swept that area 3 times, Tommy protested. "It's flooded with toxic gas. Trust me," she said simply. And they did. 4 hours later, they pulled an unconscious miner from a sealed maintenance shaft where he'd survived for 6 days on emergency rations. As they carried him to safety, the man's eyes opened briefly to look at Lyra. "Angel," he whispered, before losing consciousness again. That night, as they traveled to the nearest medical station, Marcus found Lyra standing before the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "Second thoughts?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "I was thinking about what that man called me. For so long, I believed what they told me, and I was broken, worthless. But maybe I was made for something different than what they intended. Maybe you were made to save people," Marcus suggested. Lyra turned to him with bright eyes. "They tried to break me, to make me into property. Instead, they gave me the tools to help others find hope." "That sounds like the universe's way of getting the last laugh." Marcus grinned as the Rusty Dreams continued its journey through the stars. Carrying survivors to safety, Lyra realized she'd found something her creators never intended to give. Her, a family, a purpose, and proof that sometimes the most beautiful flowers grow from the deepest scars. The Zarkan pursuit, the peace couldn't last forever. Marcus should have known that corporations like Zarkan Industries didn't simply write off their investments, no matter how failed they considered them. The warning came from an unexpected source. Coded message from Dr. Helena Voss, a former Zarkan scientist who had helped design the genetic modification programs. "They know she's alive," Helena's message crackled through the ship's communication system. "Director Hammond is furious that Experiment Z-47 escaped. He's convinced she holds valuable genetic data." 3 hunter ships left Zarkan Station this morning. Lyra stood frozen in the doorway of the communications bay, her enhanced hearing having picked up the transmission from across the ship. Her face had gone pale, the confident young woman replaced by echoes of the terrified girl they'd first rescued. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked, already calculating jump routes in his head. "Maybe 6 hours if you're lucky," Helena replied. "Marcus, they have authorization to retrieve her by any means necessary. That includes eliminating anyone who gets in their way." Tommy burst onto the bridge, tools still in hand from the engine. "Room. Boss, we've got 3 ships approaching fast. Military grade, running dark until now." Marcus turned to Lyra, whose hands were trembling slightly. "It's your choice," he said firmly. "We can try to run, or we can try to hide you somewhere safe while—" "No." Lyra's voice was quiet, but steady. "No more running. No more hiding. They want to use me as property, but I'm not the same person they threw away." Catherine joined them. On the bridge, medical scanner in hand. "Lyra, they hurt you before." "We can't let them. They hurt a broken, frightened girl who didn't know her own worth," Lyra interrupted. "But I'm not her anymore. I know who I am now." The first Zarkan ship, A sleek Predator-class hunter appeared on their screens. Its weapons. Systems were already charging, and a communication request flashed on the display. Marcus accepted the call. Director Hammond's cold face filled the screen, a man who viewed living beings as balance sheets and profit margins. Captain Reed, you are harboring stolen Zarkan property. Surrender the specimen immediately, and we'll consider not pressing charges for theft. Her name is Lyra, Marcus replied calmly. And she's not property. Hammond's expression didn't change. The genetic modifications in that creature represent millions of credits in research and development. It will be returned to us for proper disposal. Over my dead body, Tommy muttered from his station. That can be arranged, Hammond said coldly. The connection ended, and the Zarkan ships moved into attack formation. What happened next would become legendary among the salvage crews of the Outer Rim. The Rusty Dreams, a patched-together scavenger ship crewed by outcasts, faced down 3 military-grade hunters in defense of one, alien girl's freedom. But they didn't face them alone. The distress call went out on all salvage frequencies. A simple message that spread like wildfire through the asteroid fields and trade routes. The girl who saves us all needs saving herself. Ships began appearing on the sensors. Dozens of them. Salvage crews, merchant vessels, even a few pirate ships that had benefited from Lyra's rescue operations. The Steel Phoenix, the Lucky Strike, the Wanderer's Hope, every ship represented. Lives that Lyra had touched, people who had been given second chances because of her gift for finding survivors. Captain Rodriguez of the Steel Phoenix opened communications to the Zarkon fleet. This is Rodriguez speaking for the Independent. Salvage Coalition. You're outnumbered 30-3. Stand down. Hammond's voice came back, shaking with rage. You're interfering with legal corporate recovery operations. We're protecting family, came the reply from a dozen ships at once. The standoff lasted 4 hours. Zarkan's 3 hunters were powerful, but they were vastly outnumbered by ships, crewed by people who had every reason to hate corporate oppression. Finally, Hammond's fleet withdrew, but not before transmitting one final message. This isn't over. We'll be back with proper authority. As the celebrating voices of the coalition filled the communications channels, Lyra stood at the observation deck with tears streaming down her face. Marcus joined her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. I never had anyone fight for me before, she whispered. All those people, they're fighting for the person who fought for them first, Marcus replied. You saved their lives, Lyra. Now they're returning the favor. But even as they celebrated this victory, everyone knew the truth. Zarkan Industries had resources and influence that stretched across the galaxy. This was just the beginning of a much larger fight, one that would determine whether a single person's freedom was worth standing up to the most powerful corporation in known space. The galactic stand 6 months after the first confrontation, the conflict had grown beyond anyone's imagination. What started as one corporation trying to reclaim property had become a galactic movement for the rights of genetically modified beings. Lyra had become a symbol, but more importantly, she'd become a leader. The Rusty Dreams now served as flagship for what the media called the Freedom Coalition, hundreds of ships representing countless species who had suffered under corporate genetic programs. Former experiments, rescued subjects, and their allies had united under a simple banner: no person is property. Lyra stood before the Coalition's council, no longer the frightened girl found in a stasis pod, but a confident leader who had found. Her voice, her genetic enhancements, intended to make her compliant, had instead given her the ability to connect with and understand countless different species. Zarkan isn't just coming for me anymore. She addressed the assembled captains via hologram. They're coming for all of us. Every modified being, every rescued subject, everyone who dares to say that sapient life has value beyond corporate profit. The Intelligence reports were sobering. Zarkin Industries had allied with 3 other megacorporations, pooling resources to create a massive fleet. They claimed legal authority to recover all genetically modified beings, regardless of how they'd gained their freedom. Captain Martinez of the merchant vessel Star's Edge raised her hand. My daughter was part of their telepathic communication program. They want to take her back to study how she developed independent thoughts. She's 8 years old. Similar stories echoed through the council. Children torn from families, adults treated as experimental subjects, entire communities displaced for genetic harvesting. The corporate alliance wasn't just targeting individuals. They were systematically trying to reclaim anyone touched by their programs. They've made one mistake, Lyra said, her voice carrying across the comm channels. They taught us to survive. Impossible odds. They enhanced our abilities to serve their purposes. Now we'll use those same gifts to ensure no one else suffers what we did. The final confrontation came at Meridian Station, a neutral trading post on the edge of corporate space. The Alliance fleet arrived first over 200 vessels, representing the combined might of 4 megacorporations. It broadcast surrender demands and ultimatums, confident that superior firepower would end the rebellion quickly. They were wrong. The Freedom Coalition's response wasn't to match them ship for ship, but to do what they'd always done best: save lives. As the corporate fleet prepared to attack, Coalition vessels began broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Attention all civilian ships in the Meridian system, Lyra's voice carried across space. Corporate forces are preparing to attack. All non-combatant vessels, please evacuate immediately. We will provide escort protection. What happened next stunned both sides. Thousands of civilian ships, merchants, passengers, even some corporate employees began fleeing the system. But instead of running to safety, many joined the Coalition fleet. Cargo haulers positioned themselves between corporate dreadnoughts and smaller vessels. Passenger ships opened their bays to evacuate wounded. The battle that followed wasn't decided by weapons, but by something the corporations had never understood: the power of beings who chose to value each other's lives over profit. When corporate Marines tried to board Coalition ships to reclaim property, they found themselves facing not just the original subjects, but entire crews willing to defend them. When corporate commanders tried to target civilian evacuees, their own crews began refusing orders. The turning point came when Director Hammond himself arrived aboard Zarkin's flagship. In a final gambit, he challenged Lyra to single combat, claiming that as defective property, she had no right to lead others. Lyra's response was broadcast across the galaxy. I am not defective. I am not property. I am a person who chooses to stand with other people, regardless of how we were made or why we were modified. That choice to value life over profit, that's what makes us free. The corporate alliance collapsed not through military defeat, but through moral victory. Crews defected, shareholders withdrew support, and public opinion turned decisively against the genetic slavery programs. In the aftermath, Lyra found herself once again aboard the Rusty Dreams, though now it served as headquarters for a new organization dedicated to helping genetically modified beings find their place in the galaxy. Marcus joined her at the observation deck where this journey had truly begun. Any regrets? He asked, looking out at the fleet of ships that had once been scattered outcasts. Lyra smiled, her hand resting on the shoulder of a young modified girl they'd recently rescued. They tried to break me to make me valuable to them. Instead, they gave me everything I needed to prove that every life has value on its own. So what's next for the girl who changed the galaxy? Next, Lyra said, watching ships full of freed beings heading toward new homes and new lives. We make sure no one else ever has to rot in scrap, waiting for someone to recognize their worth. We've proven that kindness and compassion are stronger than corporate greed. Now we make sure that lesson spreads to every corner of the galaxy. The Rusty Dreams continued on its course, no longer just a salvage ship, but a beacon of hope, proving that sometimes the most profound changes in the galaxy begin with one person refusing to let another suffer alone.